Okay, so today we're going somewhere that every RVer hates to go, but sooner or later they have to go there. We're going to talk about tanks today. Black tanks, gray tanks, how to clean them, how to do all the things. Do I need a sanitizer? There are things that can go very, very wrong. How to flush your tank. So we brought in Prime Tank Pros today. So we've got Tim on the other end of the screen with us, or the other end of the audio call, whichever you're doing. But they literally do this for a living, and they get out there and they deal with it. And so Tasha and I were so grateful that, they were willing to come on today. So welcome, Tim, to Learn to RV, the podcast.
Well, thank you,
Yay,
Tasha
Tim!
and Jennifer, for having us on.
Yeah, of course. All right. So everybody wants to know, who's Prime Tank Pros?
Prime Tank Pros is obviously an RV holding tank company. We've been cleaning tanks for about 3.5 years now. We were with a company prior to this, and my wife, Brenda, and I started Prime Tank Pros back in August. We're independently owned now and doing our own thing out there.
I love that.
But we've cleaned thousands of tanks over the last 3.5 years. We've been busy.
So, like when you grew up, did you think this is what you'd do for a living?
Absolutely not. I have a law enforcement background. I was an HR director. No, not at all. We both retired young, and we're full-time RVers now. And basically, I got bored in retirement, believe it or not.
Well,
and,
that's how we started out.
Yeah, I needed something to do, and here we are.
All right. So was there a specific moment that said, this is what I'm doing? How did the opportunity come to you?
YouTube. Started on a YouTube channel, and that's how we got into it, about 4 years ago now. And it was strange, but I thought, that fits what our lifestyle is now. Let's go try this.
So, Tasha, I guess the real question is, have you ever had a black tank or a gray tank story that you could tell the audience?
Story that there's the stories that I could tell the audience, and then the stories that if I told the audience, I would wake up with peanut butter all over my face because somebody would have put it on my hands while I was sleeping, and tickled my face with a feather.
Tickled your nose with a feather.
Yeah, we have had our lessons learned with the black tank, but we also at a very early rally we got our tanks cleaned, and so we learned some things. And so I think we've only had one pyramid fiasco in the 3 years we've been on the road. So we've been very, very lucky in that way. But yeah, those tanks, I think the biggest thing for us is the smell. I'm just going to get that out there. No matter what we do, I say that when I know something needs really good and sanitized is when my gray tanks start smelling like canned corn. I don't know why it does that, but that's what I think it smells like. I think it smells like canned vegetables, and I will never eat canned corn ever again because that's all I can smell from the gray tank. So
that's
fascinating.
My
I have asked many tank people, why does my tank smell like corn?
Yeah, I don't think I want to go smell your tank. I'm just going to say that out loud. I did meet up with somebody who we're going to talk about a little bit later who's not here today. So actually, I'm friends with Ricky from Unique, and he says he can tell what people's tanks are clean or what they use to sanitize their tanks based on what they smell like because he knows them all. And I'm like, that's just weird.
That's
okay.
Interesting.
So Tim, we're going to center this for just a second. Walk us through a tank system. Someone just bought their first RV and they have no idea. What do they have? What do they do?
Really, I got to address the corn thing first. I would appreciate that smell on the gray tank.
You've had worse.
Well, yeah. And usually, the odors you get in your RV are gray tank related. So that's a good point you bring up because a high percentage of the odors you get aren't black tank related. They are gray tank related.
That's fascinating.
So really,
that's really interesting.
Yes. And like Ricky, I can tell there's definitely when people use some type of agent or something to break down things, there's definitely a reaction with that product and the waste that puts off a distinct odor when I'm cleaning them. I can tell a lot of them just what they use by that, unfortunately.
Wow.
Yeah. No.
So sorry, back to your question, Jennifer. A new person.
So walk us through a tank system. Somebody just bought their RV. They have no idea what to do. What do they have? How do they operate them? Let's just talk basic operation for them. They don't know how to use it. What's their first step? Their tank is full for the first time.
I really like to keep things simple. And really, I think we complicate the whole system most of the time as RVers. It really is a very simple system. If you think, first of all, use a lot of water. when you flush your tanks, use a lot of water. So we like the 1-2 method. If you go number 1, use at least 1 bowl full. If you do number 2, at least 2 full bowlfuls flush. And then after you dump your tanks, put 5 to 7 or 10 gallons back into each tank. So whatever hits the tank doesn't go directly to the floor. It's got a buffer there with the water and it'll float. Take your time. Don't get in a big rush, especially your first time if you're brand new to RVing. Make sure everything's hooked up correctly. Make sure the dump hose is tight into the ground. Make sure it's connected to the bayonet valve on the outside of your RV, nice and tight. There's nothing loose. And we always pull the gray valve first. Just let some gray water come out to make sure everything is connected and there's no leaks in the hose. That way, if something happens and something comes unconnected, it's gray water, not black water. So just a little bit.
That's important.
Very important. And then close the gray valve and then open your black valve and let that dump all the way out. And once that black tank is dumped, close the black valve and then go to your gray valves and completely dump those tanks. And then if you're using the black flush or black tank flush system, put water back into the black tank from there. Having a water meter helps. That way you're accurate about it. You're not guessing. So the water meter will tell you how many gallons are putting back in the black tank. And again, 5 to 10 gallons in that tank will help you tremendously down the road.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second because I think sometimes whenever we get to talking about this stuff, we just assume that everybody who is tuned in knows exactly what we're talking about. Like they've already got their RV, they're already on the road. But I'm thinking about the first time that somebody said to me, there are black tanks and gray tanks on an RV 3 years ago. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about? So can we go even more basic?
Well,
and can
you didn't expect to be talking like sink or float either, did you?
No. These are not conversations I thought I would have when I was like, let's go RVing. But for people who are like, maybe I want to RV someday, can you tell them the difference between a black tank and a gray tank and how those systems are separate on their RV? Maybe just even getting basic like that might be helpful for some people.
So most RVs are going to have a fresh tank. So you can put water in that tank and pump it into your system, in your faucets, your shower, your toilets, to use that water out of the fresh tank. And
I didn't even think about that one when we're talking about tanks. I'm just thinking gray and black tanks. But freshwater, that's a whole nother level.
Yeah. It's there, right? And all RVs have them. And then depending on what type of RV you have, a travel trailer, a fifth wheel, a coach, all depends on if you have 1 black tank or 2 black tanks or 1 gray tank or 2 gray tanks. So it's all dependent on the coach. So anywhere from 3 or 4 total tanks to maybe 5 total tanks, that's including the freshwater tank. So let's just go with a fifth wheel. I'll take my fifth wheel. I have 1 black tank and 2 gray tanks. The black tank is specifically for bodily waste. Won't get into detail. Everybody should know that. Then I have a gray tank for my shower and the sink in my bathroom where the shower is. And then I have another gray tank dedicated to my kitchen sink. So there's the 3 tanks for the waste, for the dirty water and the wastewater. And then again, the fresh tank is separate. So those are all separate tanks. Now, if you look at a coach or a class A, you're looking at 3 tanks. They have a freshwater tank and then just simply 1 gray tank and 1 black tank most of the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Black tank.
So
is
do you
for
think
all
it
the waste.
matters if you're a full timer or more of a weekend warrior? Do you think, your tank care is done differently?
Yes. So good question. Full timer definitely need to take, I would say, better care of their system, sanitizing the freshwater system at least, twice a year, if not 3 times a year. Definitely using the black tank flush system more often. I'm getting it professionally cleaned more often. I'll clean ours every 6 months. We're full timers. Probably go 9 months. I wouldn't go past 9 months though. If you push it, you could cause yourself some issues. As your weekenders, obviously, it's not going to be needed to be professionally cleaned that often. Maybe every year, 15, 18 months. I would still use the black tank flush system to do what you can do with that. But a lot of times, they're at the dump. They're quickly dumping at a state park or something. They don't have time to sit there for, 20, 30, 40 minutes to use a black tank flush. Here's a tool that I think every RVer out there should have. And it's called a Valterra Flush King. And you can buy them on Amazon for $37 to $44 a shot with a water meter. This is the thing that it It's better than the black tank flush, in my opinion, that's on the coach, and it's not as good as a professional. So it's right in the middle point of that. But as a full timer, I use that about every third time I dump my tanks. I put that on and just flush out the black tank and flush out my gray tanks. That keeps the waste out of my black tank and keeps the mold out of my shower and the gray tank, along with the food and grease out of my galley tank or the kitchen tank. So that's a good maintenance product. It's not going to clean the tanks, but it'll do a great job after you have them cleaned to maintain them until you get them professionally cleaned again.
That's really smart. And I'm sure that in the field, you've seen things like, have you ever seen somebody like, we actually had a client for RVer Roofing Solutions a couple years back he was like asking all sorts of questions about tanks. He had gone on a weekend trip and they forgot to dump the tanks and it sat there for a while. And he's like, it'll be fine, right? And I'm thinking, no, water evaporates. But, I'm not a tank specialist. So what happens in those situations?
Yeah, so
situations.
I like it. Good enunciation. So that happens, especially the heat of Florida, Arizona, your hot weather areas. That water is going to evaporate out there if you store it for a long time with the water in it. What I see a lot of times is leaky valves. So people, if they take the cap off their system, they have water run out and their valves are shut, which you should keep all your valves closed. But if you have water running out, specifically that black tank, now you're leaching all the water out of that black tank, leaving the waste behind. There's your pyramid, right? Yeah. It's just going to cause you a clog at some point. And you really need to get that valve fixed and taken care of right away, because that's not a good situation. And I see a lot of that in the field. So the same thing would happen with the evaporation. The water evaporates off, the waste stays behind. So keeping all the valves closed is key. I know a lot of people I come across keeps the grate open for whatever reason. We just think keeping the valves closed and keeping those tanks wet is the best way to do business maintaining those tanks. Otherwise, anything that goes in the tank sticks to the bottom and eventually just accumulates.
Can I ask a question? You were talking about rinsing out the grease, being able to get the grease and stuff, the food waste that gets down into your gray tanks. And that made me wonder, our tanks on our RVs are very different than the systems that we had in sticks and bricks homes. So can you talk a little bit about, are there things that we should be avoiding letting go down our drain, like in our kitchen or when we're showering? Is this safe to use like bath oils, or is there anything that we should be staying away that way that's not safe for the plastic or the type of material that creates the tanks?
I am so glad you were going there and not somewhere else, because I was so worried you're going to make people pee in the shower.
Listen,
I'm sure they do.
I just don't need to know what people do in their showers, but I do need to know, and then like even like, like the poopery, right? Like, is that safe in a black tank? I don't know. Am I using it? Yes. Should I be? I don't know.
Here's really our take is, we'll just start the black tank. The only thing that should be going down your black tank is human waste and water.
That's actually my next section is water, water, water. So we're going in the right direction.
And toilet paper, by the way. I mean, please. And you can use the toilet paper myth. I mean, you can see all kinds of stuff on YouTube. Toilet paper as a whole, we used to do big rallies and do the toilet paper thing in jars of water, just sink water. It breaks down all the same. So we full-time, we use 2-ply Charmin. We just make sure that we flush a lot of water behind the paper. So when I said 2 bowlfuls of water, we're almost at the 3 bowlful level. Now people say, well, I have to dump more often. Correct. You will have to dump more often, but your tanks will be in very good shape just by doing that.
And your rear will be much happier about the softer toilet paper.
Yes, it will. I had a guy tell me that one time. He said, thank goodness you told my wife that in a rally. My cheeks have never been so happy.
Well, I mean, we're not sponsored by Charmin, but if you are like the Bears and need the Charmin, it's all there. So, and it's funny because water was kind of the conversation that I had with Ricky a couple months ago when we were at a rally. He explained that, if you have poop that comes up and how many people don't cover it with water. And so if it sneaks out the top, so this is my Marine Corps story that my husband's going to kill me for later. So when I first got married to him, we're driving down the road and he goes, groundhog. And I'm like, groundhog, what does that mean? So, yeah. So it means what maybe you think it means. So, but now it's a different meaning in a black tank. If you have a groundhog in your black tank, it's above the water line.
Right.
You have put both of our lives at risk, because if I leave this in and don't edit it out, he's not just coming for you, he's coming for me too.
My goodness.
We have fun. Anyway, so, I didn't know what that was before I got... I need a second.
My
I have
gosh.
to dry the tears now. This is... Anyway.
Frank, I had nothing to do with this. I did not know that was coming at all.
Right.
It's actually in my notes, because when I first married him, I had no idea. But the thing is I think a lot of people don't realize that if you don't cover, it's okay. So a porta potty, we'll go to a porta potty. If the liquid is over the top of that in the porta potty, you're pretty okay. You're like, oh, I can do this. But if it's sticking out, you're like,
Yeah.
You're like, no, I'm not going to participate. So, how much water is actually enough per flush? I know we talked about it a little bit, but, you need a lot of water in your tanks. And most people, I think that so many people don't use enough water, especially if they're boondockers.
Boondockers are tough because you have to conserve, and that becomes a problem. That's where the Flush King, the Valterra Flush King I talked about, comes into play really, really big time for them. Because the first thing I would do as a boondocker, as soon as I got to some place where I could dump and have some time, I would use that Flush King to flush the tanks out as long as it took to get them clean, which they won't come clean because once you have sludge building up, the only way to get that sludge broken up and out is a professional cleaning, unfortunately. But at least you can get the new stuff out, and it'll scrape the bottom for you a little bit. But if it's built up and baked on, if you will, there's just nothing you can do really. You have to call us.
Yep, there's no spatula system that works. Got it.
No. I had a guy call me in Florida a couple of years ago, and he bought a used rig, which we say, hey, if you buy a used RV, call us. Let us get you back to, zero. He called and said, man, I'm clogged up. I'm clogged up from the toilet to the tank. I said, how do you know? Well, when I flush, it comes back to the toilet and nothing's draining. I said, what do you know about the previous user? He said he left his tank valves open for 2 years. Guys, so now he's got his black tank open. He doesn't have enough water pressure or water weight to pull the waste out. All the water's going out, waste is staying behind. Long story short, I get there. He tried to use a household plunger in the RV toilet. That's a no-no, because once you force it down, everything comes back up, and his little bathroom was a mess. So in my mind, I thought,
it's
okay,
the type of geyser you don't want in your house.
Yeah, and I thought, I can't do this. So I gave him my plunger, taught him how to use my plunger. So he worked from the top, I worked from the bottom, about 7 hours to get him unclogged. Because it was, the toilet paper just turns paper mache, and the waste is literally like cement. I mean, it was a mess. So here's the worst part. When I get done, I get him unclogged. He's draining the toilet flush and all that. I said, well, I'll let you get to work now. I got some cleanup to do. And he goes, nah, my wife will take care of it. And I thought, I'm out of here before she gets home.
Right?
That poor woman.
That was off base out of your question here. But so back to the question.
But that could be anybody listening. I mean, this could happen to just about anybody. So Tasha, when you got the new rig, Tasha got a new rig this past spring. Did you get your tanks cleaned?
Yes, we did. Sorry. Listen, the name of this whole episode is going to be like Geysers, Groundhogs, and Paper Mache, I think is what we're going to call this one.
Hey, that'll work for SEO in all sorts of ways.
I can tell you, if you see the groundhog in the toilet, it's too late. You better call me.
That could also be a slogan for your next ad. I give that to you for free. Call them now.
Book, Groundhogs, Geysers, and Paper Mache by Tim and Brenda, Farm Tank Pros.
We get TikTok.
Yes, we did get our tanks cleaned. That is something that we did. That is something that we're pretty we're like religious about, in that, like, we're the people that are like, oh, you're buying a rig. Did you get it inspected? You bought a rig. Did you get your tanks cleaned? Like, you just don't know what you're getting before you. And I do know that the individuals who own the rig before us, they used the ice cube method to kind of clean. And I have heard so many mixed
So
reports
we
of
did the
that.
ice cube method for several years. So,
Yeah.
back in 2013, when we hit the road full time, like there wasn't cleaning companies out there, or there might have been. We just didn't know about them. But, so they told you to take 2 bags of ice, put down your toilet, and let it, agitate while you're driving down the road. And
Make
so
that
it's supposed to
loose.
do the swirly thing, but it doesn't do the swirly thing. It doesn't actually work. And they tell you to put Dawn dish soap in there. And I have a friend, and she's a very sweet lady, that says Dawn's great for baby birds, but it might not be so great for the inside of your tank because it can dry out your seals. And so Tim knows exactly who I'm talking about. And so, I heard that and I thought, we tell people that about roofs. That could be very true because it never occurred to me that it was the same thing. So the ice cube method, if you're out there using it, Tim, is that like, what would you say, truth or myth?
It's a myth in my eyes. The benefit of the ice is the water you get when it melts in 5 seconds. That's the benefit, the water.
Yeah, because the air conditioning is not working in your tank. In fact, it's probably 10 degrees warmer in there at every given moment.
And if it put ice cube in your hand, it melts pretty quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But that's how we managed it for the first 2 years.
Hey.
Yeah. And for us, because I didn't know, is that a valid, I don't know. So we were like, tanks need cleaned. We need a level set. Like we need to start from zero. We would like to know that only our poo is in our tank. Like let's just start where let's start at zero, please. Is where we would like to start. So that's where we started.
That's good.
So if you've ever been the recipient of a poop pyramid, because that's what we lovingly call it, right, in this industry, what are they doing or not doing without even realizing it?
Not enough water, or a leaky valve. So they don't even know what's happening because they just see when they take the cap off, or they see water constantly running down their tube. They have no idea what the cause of that is or what's happening, or too much toilet paper sometimes.
So in my industry, a lot of times people will take it onto themselves and do a DIY fix to their roof. And it sometimes doesn't make it better. Have you ever had that happen where somebody DIY'd their fix and then all of a sudden, hey, this is way over my head. Tim and Brenda to the rescue. What does that look like for you?
Sometimes people think when they're flushing their toilet, let's fill the tank all the way full. Well, tank needs somewhere to vent. So that can be a problem if it's not venting correctly or whatever, and that could cause you a huge problem. I mean, it could crack the tank. The tank could fall out. So many bad things can happen. I think for the most part, people really don't want to do it yourself on your tank, specifically the black tank. So they're going to call an RV tech to come take care of that for them. Thank goodness.
So my husband is the guy that will do a DIY on a black tank because he can, and he knows enough to be dangerous. So it's exciting. So last spring, he was he ordered a new tank. We were in Colorado, so it was cool enough. It wasn't going to smell that bad. The campground we were at knew we were doing it, and so they were fine. And he came out covered in chocolate. But he smelled lovely. Well, and so he's like, this tank doesn't fit. And so this is why to call a professional.
So you got
one
of those chocolate guys that they put in like Easter baskets for wives. You got one of those, but not at Easter.
All right. So Tim, you're up, because what about the people that want to do it right? What does, getting that right look like in real life?
Again, the Valterra Flush King, using the black tank flush. I heard the black tank flush, most of those are at the back of the tank or on the end. So they really don't touch the mid to the front of the tank, unfortunately, on most models. And I heard an RV tech put it pretty good the other day. He said, it's really not a black tank flush. It's a black tank fill system because it really doesn't flush much. That's why we always tell every customer I have, get a Valterra Flush King, and that's the way to maintain the tank.
So I guess the real question then is, what makes a professional cleaning so different?
We hydrojet the tank, so we're going in with a lot of pressure directed in the tank to scrape, to break up any sludge in there, anything that's baked on, clean the walls, get those sensors cleaned off so your sensors may work. And nothing's 100% guaranteed on those, but it's just a high pressure solution, but high pressure hydrojet, if you will. And that's what you need to break stuff up. Now, there's some companies that use a lot of pressure. There's some companies that don't use a lot of pressure. I think we're in the sweet spot there of what it needs to be at. That's worked well for us for 3.5 years. And I've actually taken a camera down the toilet after I've done a black tank. This is quite a story. It was a clog, cleaned the guy's tank, and he says, "Hey, mind if I stick my camera down and check the tank out?" "Oh, feel free." Tank was clean, but I saw something in the corner of the tank, and I went, "Hey, get your camera over there in the corner of the tank." Well, in the corner of the tank was a marijuana pipe, and he says, "Well, how do you know?" "Well, I've been in law enforcement. I know what a marijuana pipe is." But all I could picture was this 15-year-old kid, with this marijuana pipe, and here comes mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, and he throws it down the black tank, and it sat there in the tank. So we worked on getting that out for him, and but the tank was clean.
Well, that's exciting. I think we just lost Tasha. So if you're tuning in from somewhere and Tasha just blipped and disappeared, I don't know if she'll be back. So Tim and I'll keep going because we don't want to lose the episode because we've got some good stuff here.
Your
Let's talk
question
tank treatment.
or Tasha's question before we went off on a tangent here was what not to put in your tanks.
Yeah.
Again, black tank, waste, water, toilet paper. That's really all you need. Your kitchen sink, you want to make sure you're cleaning those plates off as best you can with a paper towel before you wash them. The tanks just aren't made to hold a lot of grease and food and things like that. So you can get a small screen from Walmart or those box stores. You can put that in there to collect a lot of stuff. That'll help you out a ton. But really, there's no way to get all the grease out of the tank. Even when we go in, we do a good job of breaking the grease up and getting it out of there. But there's just no way as a consumer we can do everything possible to stop grease from going out of the tank. It just happens. But
well, that makes sense to me. I mean, like, because you can't avoid it completely. I mean, I think one of the things that we do personally is like if we cook something that's got chicken grease, we would put it in the toilet but I guess it doesn't matter in real life.
I keep a couple pickle jars under the sink, and that's what I use for dumping grease down or things like that. And then just making sure we're really good about wiping things down before we wash them. And then the shower tank, obviously, you're going to get soaps and hairs and skin and things down there. There's just nothing you can do. You can get a little screen for that too. There's one on the market called the Shroom. I think that works pretty good for hair collection specifically. But it's like anything else. You're going to have to get one of those plastic barbed tools to get down to that drain to pull that hair out every so often to maintain it. I've seen some bad hair balls coming out of showers or gray tanks, the shower tank specifically. But that just happens. I mean, that just happens. But if you start with water in the tank, that'll help things from sticking to the bottom.
That's fair. And Tasha just texted me. She can't get back in. So she says, but make sure I know what happened with the marijuana pipe. Was it retrieved?
It was. I couldn't get it out. It's floating around in there. Hopefully it's popped out by now. Just like people drop spoons and forks down their toilet. They want us to get them out. And I was asked.
Our first year on the road, we actually had one of the kids thought it was fun because it was a hole to put Matchbox cars down it. And we didn't know until it raced down the tube. And then the kids heard it. And my husband, now we have the clear end because of that whole incident. He went and got a clear piece so we could see when large, chunkier things came out of the black tank.
And something else you don't want to do in the black tank, no wipes.
I was actually going to ask that.
No wipes. They don't, excuse me, they don't break down. They're going to cause a clog, and they're tough to get out of the tank. Frankly, you're not even supposed to use them at home. Even though they're marketed as flushable, they're really not. I've talked to many waste management people, wastewater treatment plant people, and they don't like them either.
Awesome. All right, so let's go into tank treatments. I know this isn't your forte, but you've seen a million products used in the tank. What should people actually be looking for, and maybe what should they avoid? So we personally use Unique because they do have the bacteria as well as the other to break down the poop. And Ricky has big tanks that are clear that he studies all this. And because I'm a vendor in these spaces, I have conversations with people all the time. I don't know that there's a bad option, but I just think that there's better options, if that makes sense. So for us, I don't want just a fragrance in there. I want something that's going to actually do a job. But what does that look like out there? Would you say there's what should people be looking for if they're using some kind of tank drop-in?
We kind of go off the premise of we really don't want to break anything down to create a sludge in our tank. So we may use Calgon every now and then in the tank just to make sure everything's slick in there and the sensors stay, slick so nothing sticks to the sensors. But really, just a lot of water. Even if you use a tank treatment, I would still use a lot of water.
Gotcha.
So nothing specific.
Okay, that's awesome. Did we talk about gray tanks yet? No, we did not. So gray tanks, we kind of touched on them. No, we did all of this actually. All right, sensors.
We usually use water and Calgon in our gray tanks also, just
really?
to keep them slicked up and things sliding out of the tank like they should. And that's why we use it. That way stuff doesn't stick to the
Interesting.
bottom things.
So
Yeah.
I was at a rally for Freightliner this past spring, and I was with another tank cleaning company. And one guy came in, he says, I need my tanks cleaned, but my gray tank, is there a way to clean those? And it's different, isn't it, to clean that? Because the guy went on to explain that there's like a whole sanitation overnight method. So what do you do that too?
That's for the freshwater tank.
Yeah. Oh, for the fresh tank. Okay. So talk to me about that.
When we clean tanks, we're cleaning the black and grays with the hydrojet. Freshwater sanitation, to do it right, it's a day and a half project. And most of the time, if you just look in your manual, it'll tell you how you do it. But basically, going to mix, a half cup of bleach with every 15 gallons of water your fresh tank holds, or a quarter cup of bleach with every 15 gallons of water your fresh tank holds. Get that system filled up, and then run that through all your faucets and let it sit overnight. And then, after it sits, rinse everything out, get the freshwater tank cleaned out, put fresh water back in, and then run fresh water through the system to get the bleach smell and the bleach out of the system. Now, there's a no bleach system out there. The company does have a system with no bleach. Takes about 20 minutes to do. Very effective system. As Prime Tank Pros, we can sanitize that way too.
Oh, okay.
We don't.
That's
My wife and I don't use bleach products. Again, bleach is caustic, so it has a tough time to dry those seals out over time. So we stay away from that.
so. I mean, I know a lot of people also use vinegar.
Yeah,
So I mean,
vinegar,
that's
commercial.
an alternative, especially if you have kids in the house or anyone that's sensitive to bleach.
Yes,
I
yes.
think that's super important too. I feel personally victimized by my sensors because I don't think I've had a rig that the sensors actually worked, but why do they lie? I mean, like, that's really the question. And is there anything that we can do that actually fixes them? You said sometimes that they work after you clean a tank. And
Yeah.
so is it just buildup on them that makes them stop working?
Yeah, most of the time we can get them cleaned up and cleared. They might work for a day, a month, who knows? Yeah, they're so sensitive. I mean, little nubs, in the in the fifth wheels and travel trailers, there are little nubs inside the tank. So anything that hangs up on them is going to throw the system out of whack. On the coaches, a lot of them have sticky patches on the outside of the tank, depending what brand it is. And anything that builds up on the wall where that patch is supposed to read will throw it out of whack. Or if the little sticky pad comes undone, that'll throw it out. I mean, they're just so sensitive sometimes. Unfortunately, I always tell customers, I say, don't get hung up on looking at your sensors because they just may not be telling you what you really want to see. And I always tell them, if you have a regular dump toilet and you go to flush a toilet and it bubbles up or burps back at you, it's time to dump your black tank.
Or run, depending
Yeah.
on your perspective. I actually have a friend years ago, he's not on the road anymore, but he put a house toilet in his camper. And so, that was a whole thing because the bowl always needs water. And so if you're not maintaining it that way, and he couldn't figure out why it wasn't working like it should, because yeah, it was a whole thing.
We run into that a lot of down south in the wintertime, that people are hard plumbed in, and they put residential toilets in or hard plumb their cells in, but they didn't take the tanks out of the system. So now they keep all their valves open and they still have stuff going to the tank. Well, that causes a problem. So just for viewers, if you're thinking you're a spot seasonally or whatever, you want to hard plumb your tank, your system into the ground, take the tanks out of the system, take it out of the process, bypass the tanks, and then you should be okay.
And that's only good if you're in a campground year round at that
Right.
location, or you're parked seasonally.
Correct.
So that's something to keep in mind, because if you're traveling and you do that, that waste is not going into a tank anymore.
Right.
Yep. All right. So one more question, and then I've got a bunch of rapid fire questions that are going to be a lot of fun for me and maybe not so fun for you. So the first one is, so gray tanks, a lot of people think it's safe to trickle them. And I pretty much disagree with that statement. I don't think a little bit is okay. I think that our environment's worth more. I know that lots of people have gotten fined over the years. The kids were in a upside down volcano one year out in Quartzsite. We were out at a rally and all these kids were playing in it. And I'm like, no, don't do that, because out in Quartzsite, that means that's where a lot of people will go dump their gray tanks. And you should not dump your gray tanks into the environment, because there's a lot of reasons. But I'd love to know your take on that too.
Yeah, no, we are very, very careful that when we clean tanks, we get nothing on the ground. We catch everything that might spill. EPA is very, very, particular about waste handling. And And your gray tank is waste. I mean, you have bacteria in there, you have mold coming out of it. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in that tank that people can't control. So yes, I'd say, yeah, we're not trickling anything on the ground. That'd be bad. That's bad mojo.
Yeah, don't drive down the road and have your gray or black tank trickling the whole way out. If it's leaking, make sure you get it fixed.
Yeah,
All right,
we were actually at a state park one time, and we drive by the dump, and the guy has a gas-powered power washer out there, and he's got the wand stuck up in his dump hole, and black tank is going on the ground. There's no way to dump it because he's got the wand up, and black waste is going all over. I'm just in my mind thinking, what are we doing?
I've seen that too, and it's crazy how many people don't travel with a hose, and they just think that you open it wide open and all of a sudden you're at a dump station, and that means that dump station's going to catch it. That's not how that works. You still need a hose. You still need to function. And don't ever take the wand at the dump station that says non-potable water and stick that in your fresh tank.
Correct.
Like, that's just not a good idea.
Good point.
All right, you ready for these? Worst smell you've ever encountered on a job. Describe it without describing it.
Oof. Hot, humid days, the smell is there. It's just hanging there.
One product every RVer should have in their toolkit. I think the wand is where you're going with that.
The Valterra Flush King and the water meter.
A tank issue that you see most often that makes you want to cry a little.
Wipes, flushable wipes.
Interesting.
People using flushable wipes.
I can't imagine putting flushable wipes in my tank.
No, me neither.
Okay. All right. True or false? You can tell us how someone takes care of their whole RV just by looking at their tanks.
Actually, probably by the wet bay, where the valves are. If you have to open a door and get to the wet bay, you can tell a lot by that.
Okay. And the best advice for someone who just bought their first RV and is terrified of this entire episode.
Don't be afraid. It's part of the process. Keep all your valves closed until you're about 3/4 of the way full on all your tanks, and then go dump them one at a time. Use a lot of water when you flush.
Well, thanks, Tim. I appreciate you. You have made me feel so much better about every questionable tank decision we've ever made. Where can people find you guys if they have additional questions?
PrimeTankPros.com, or you can call my personal cell phone at 308-227-9506. We are also forming a RV tank cleaning professional network. So there's going to be a whole network of us that are individually owned throughout the United States, and each company specializes in plumbing, holding tank cleaning, and some are RV techs. So if you have a problem, they're there. If you have that leaky valve, they can fix that valve while they're right there on the spot for you and take care of your issue there, along with cleaning the tank. So that network's in the works right now. We'll have our expertise in cleaning tanks. We've all done it for a long time, cleaned a lot of tanks, and we all practice best practices on tank cleaning. And for us, it's about putting the customer first, taking care of their needs, making sure they're happy, and providing good customer service while we're there and follow up.
And we appreciate that about you. If you're listening right now and you're thinking, my tanks couldn't get any worse, that's okay. Reach out to Prime Tank Pros. But also, they're one of the official sponsors for Learn to RV, the summer scavenger hunt. And so that's coming in July. So keep an eye on learntorv.com. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to all the Learn to RV ecosystem so you don't miss that drop. We have some prizes and we have some great sponsors coming on this year. The theme, of course, this year, America's 250, is the Great American Scavenger Hunt. So the first week is all 4th of July themed because it has to be. And so each week the points reset. What's really neat about that is it's anybody's game. And so you can come in week 2 or 3 or 4 and everybody can play. And so we're lucky to have Prime Tank Pros be a part of that. And we're just so thankful for them. So you'll see their links coming up in that too. If you're a vendor out there looking for a sponsorship opportunity, this is a once in a year opportunity and it keeps growing every year. So thanks for joining us on Learn to RV, the podcast. We'll see you next time around a campfire with maybe no gray tanks or black tanks. We'll see.